Education has been a hot button issue in America, especially over the past few years, as the culture wars have broke out over what kids are reading, over what they're being taught in school, and particularly the kind of indoctrination they are receiving from the books that are available in public school libraries, and also from the ideologies that are being pushed in class under the guise of so-called progressive and sociologically enlightened education. And one of the most influential groups to emerge on this front, fighting against the indoctrination of kids, is none other than the group Moms for Liberty. But they have oftentimes been accused of being book-banning Puritans who wish to censor things they don't like and who also wish to control the ability, or rather limit the ability, of parents to direct the future of their kids contrary to their ostensible stated aims. And while I personally think that this perception is absolutely incorrect and it's wrong, and I'll say why in a second, it does not stop, the obvious incorrectness of this perception does not stop certain hit operators like Joy Reid from acting as if this is true and then using this false premise to try to score political hits on this organization that are then therefore lauded within her own social circles. This is how the corporate media works. Corporate media works if you affirm their narratives within their circles and then you are a champion for those narratives. You are seen as a hero within certain environments. That's what's happening right now. And so in this light, I recently came across an interview that Joy Reid did with Tiffany Justice, who is a major figure within Moms for Liberty, a co-founder. I know her as well. She's a nice lady. And so I wanted to analyze some of the tactics being used by Reid in this interview, and then I wanted to get into the more philosophical territory, which is where I'm more comfortable, explaining why this political phenomenon is happening, and also explaining the concepts that are inherent in many of Joy Reid's talking points. So before we actually analyze this clip, or parts of it at least, I'll analyze a few parts of it, I have one request for all of you. If you enjoy political commentary with a philosophical bent, I ask you right now to like this video, to comment on this video, to share this video, to subscribe to this channel, because you are going to help us achieve a revolution of the mind. You will help us achieve an America that is better, that is more prosperous, and more in tune with its founding first principles. Now, without further ado, let us actually look at parts of this interview and see the kind of tactics and principles on display in this conversation. Let's watch the first part.
The question I'm asking is, what is the expertise that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read? What is your expertise?
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so I'm going to answer
Please
for you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? Just, I mean, that's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No, wait, we're talking about public school.
One moment.
All right.
So now you've asked me questions.
Sure.
I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
Well, who is the main character? What's the name of the main character in All Boys Aren't Blue?
You're asking me right now.
You just gave me very specific information about this book, so you're presenting yourself as somebody expert.
It's the gentleman.
Hold on. Who's the main character in the book?
The main character is the author.
What's his name?
George, I believe, is his first name.
Because you're giving me very specific information that is.
You're asking me to remember the name of an author.
You
the
just
name
remembered
of the author
very
doesn't.
specific things.
Joy.
Here's my
We're
question.
talking about
Here's my
strap.
question.
You didn't answer my question.
No. I'm going to answer your question.
Okay, a few things I want you guys to notice. Reid, as opposed to actually addressing the claim, she first tries to attack the credibility of Tiffany by saying, are you an expert on this book? Are you an expert on this matter? Now, this may seem like a cheap smear meant to just demean Tiffany's ability to speak on these issues authoritatively, which it is. But it also reflects a deeper phenomenon in modern day political thinking that is actually triggered by understanding the distinction between the old world and the new world. What am I talking about? I'll explain. In the old world mentality, the thinking was that status, caste status, class status, or your favor with the ruling elites, or your position on the social hierarchy, or some other feature that you really didn't have control of, that was the guiding determinant of your life and of your future and of your standing in society. So in the old world, in Europe in the old world, and all across the world in the old world, that was the guiding metric. Well, America came along and said, no, your own individual will, your ability to use your conscience for productive means, not just productive means, but also for means that are attuned to enlightenment, your ability to recognize the nature of reality and deduce natural law from that and act in accordance with those natural law principles, your ability to consent, your ability to show goodwill to your fellow man, all of these principles combined together produced your standing in society and produced what your future would be. So in other words, in the New World, you had a radically different perspective about the individual, their standing and their value in society, and followed from that is the nature of political order. Why is this important? Because a New World mentality would not tell you under any circumstance that your ability to be knowledgeable on something or your ability to pursue something is based on your expertise. Because expertise, I like to call it the code of expertise, oftentimes verifies someone's position as an expert by looking at their certifications or by looking at their institutional affiliations. A lot of people will say, if you come from an Ivy League university, oh my gosh, that's so impressive. Or if you have a degree from a particular place, or if you are a visiting fellow at a particular institution, a lot of people whose minds are bound up by the old world mentality that America's existence rejects, they will say that you are credible. But credibility can't be conferred by status, because if credibility is conferred by status, then knowledge doesn't matter. Let me say that again. If credibility is conferred by status, then the actual content of the knowledge you're looking at does not matter, because status is higher than knowledge, because status has nothing to do with knowledge. Status has everything to do with the perception of institutions and degrees and objects in any given society. Reid is quite literally using an old world tactic to dismiss a new world concern, and that new world concern being, how do we maintain a good society in the presence of a tolerant society, and that when there are actors that are not good and are intolerant and wish to use our goodwill against us by indoctrinating our kids with this material. Do you see what's happening? And by the way, I don't even believe that Joy Reid understands that she is a emissary for the old world. I think that she has accepted a set of premises within her mind that have quite literally bound up her ability to think clearly and have made her the perfect propagandist for the corporate establishment leftism that she is the face of. This is not an insult to Joy Reid. It's not even about Joy Reid. It's about the phenomena that literally produces this kind of thinking. It's not about Joy Reid. It's not about MSNBC. It's about certain phenomena, certain patterns of thought that produce certain answers and certain arguments. That's what it's about. So we already see this right here. And then, as you guys will see, she pivots from expertise, that old world idea that you have to have a degree or status to be valid in the conversation, which then therefore limits the pool of people that can speak on something. And by doing that, gives an artificial advantage to those that have power and do have that status, and therefore allows consensus of those within that group to be more mighty than the opinions of individuals on the single basis of vanity, which then allows things like the COVID-19 lockdowns to happen and other kind of disastrous things that happen during that period of time, like the school lockdowns, because the experts, those with status said so. No. But the experts in one domain may not be the experts in the most important domain, that is the ethical domain, the moral domain. So that expertise is actually useless, because if you don't understand anything about good ethics or morality, then how in the world can you rule a just political order? You can't. You can't. All right, let's continue.
You don't have to be an expert to know that dildos aren't appropriate for public school. I mean, come on, let's get real.
This book is a full context story as you said, of the author's experience. Why is it your right or a Moms for Liberty activist's right to say that a parent who wants their child to have access to this book, which gives a personal experience of this author, why doesn't a liberal parent, for instance, or a parent of an LGBTQ kid, why don't they have a right for their child to just have access to this book? Why is it your right to say they can't?
So again, we're talking about incest, rape, and pedophilia.
And
Joy,
each parent, each parent has to decide what is appropriate for their child to read. So I want you to answer. I'm going to ask it one more time.
Right.
What is your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story? Why don't they have the right? Why don't they have the right as a parent to say, my child can have access to this book?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator. That means that they have either been raped by a family member, they've experienced
and your proof of that is what?
You just said that
What's
if a child feels seen by this story.
Okay, so what's Reid doing here? She's using the idea of parental rights, which Moms for Liberty stands for very strongly. And if in any reasonable sense, you have to say that, because they do. She's using that idea, she's weaponizing it against Tiffany to make Tiffany's mission seem contradictory. Okay, so in order to really realize what Reid is doing, you have to understand, what is parental rights? Is parental rights, does that simply mean that the parent has the right to do anything and everything to their kid? No, of course not. So let's break this down. To have a right in the classical American understanding, based on natural law, simply means there is something about your humanity, rooted in your nature, that enables you to act morally in a morally responsible manner. That is what a right is. So when you have a right to life, you must be living and you must be able to maintain your life to act anyway, especially to act morally. If you have the right to liberty, you must be able to act in order to act morally. You have a right to property, you must be able to own yourself and then own the products of your labor in order to survive in the world. These are necessary things that are observable in nature and necessary for society, and therefore they are rights that are pre-social, that do not come from society, but they are consequential for society, right? Okay, you go beyond this. So we have to ask ourselves, we have to see about the categories. What is parental rights? Well, if a right is a quality that is built into your humanity that allows you, enables you to act in a moral way, that is a way that is not going to interfere with someone else's rights, in a way that's not going to harm someone else, in a way that's not going to violate someone else's consent, then a parental right is a power the parent has in order to shepherd and guide the development of their kid in a similarly moral way that conforms to that sort of negative sense of natural law. So a parental right would be a parent being able to decide what concepts to expose to their kid. A parental right would be a parent being able to decide, what kind of influences are around their kid. But an example, a non-example of a parental right, something that is not a parental right, would not be a parent being able to abuse their kid physically. Just because you have a power over the kid does not mean the power lets you do anything. Rights are permissive to a certain set of behaviors and actions, or else they wouldn't be rights. Rights literally suggest limitations on you. Your right to live limits someone from unjustly taking your life. Therefore, your right to control what your kid reads and sees and does is limited by how much harm you do to your child. So if you want your kid to be reading pornographic material, that is not an example of parental rights, because that kind of behavior significantly harms a kid's psyche. It devours their innocence, and childhood innocence is the constraining principle that should guide all behavior of parental conduct. That's the point. So no, a parent does not have the right to expose their kindergartner to pornography. No, they do not. No, a parent does not have the right psychologically harm their kindergartner or their toddler or their preteen with nonsense stuff? No. A parent does not have the right to abuse their kid. No. Parental rights is not the right for parents to do whatever they want to do. It is simply the right that enables them to ensure their kid has a healthy development. But to someone like Joy Reid, who lacks understanding of these conceptual issues and whose entire view of parents is formed by this community-based ethic that leftism and progressivism pushes, none of this matters, and rights are not limiting. Rights, or rather, they are emboldening, they are enlarging. Because to the progressive, rights are not something that constrains you from doing something. Rights are rather something that actually permits you to do something, which is why progressives believe there's a right to health care, a right to be free from poverty. They literally say that you have to be given these rights by people, even though if it's given to you, it's not a right. That's part of what's going on here, my friends. It is conceptual and rhetorical manipulation of the highest order against virtuous behavior. And about this opt-out form stuff, listen, I think that if we're going to look at this pragmatically, it is great to have an opt-out form so that parents can better shield their kids from harmful influences. But what is not okay is if you continue to push this stuff on an institutional level onto kids and you just use the opt-out form as a band-aid to say, well, if you don't want to actually see it, then you shouldn't have to see it. No. Because on an institutional level, the fact that public schools or any schools are endorsing this kind of behavior speaks to the current governing principle of modern-day American education, which has been in effect since 1835, since under the Prussian system, it came to America and affected us, and that is progressive education. The idea that a kid, a pupil, must be socially conscious, and that social consciousness should come from the education they receive in the schoolhouse. From that single premise flows the introduction of sexually explicit books in school. From that single premise flows so many incidences of indoctrination. From that single premise flows the maiming of traditional education, reading, writing, arithmetic, math, and seeing things generally as opposed to being tied to the society in the name of this new false enlightenment, this new false concept. That is the problem. But unfortunately, there is an apparatus in our country that wishes to maintain this system built on the false concept of progressive education, which is all about indoctrination and not about true enlightenment. And that's the issue. What did Immanuel Kant say? Immanuel Kant said that enlightenment is man's liberation from his self-imposed ignorance. Well, I would update that, because he was correct. It is. But if the ignorance is imposed upon you by a broader system, then perhaps true enlightenment is more than just your own self-imposed ignorance being destroyed. Maybe it's really about the self-imposed ignorance that you used, informed by the ignorance of the system. Maybe that's true enlightenment. In any case, we shouldn't have to think about our pupils that way. We should just assume that their education is going to help better them. But we can't do that, because that is the exact opposite of what's actually happening. So I'll let you guys watch the rest of the exchange for yourself. I will link it in the comment section, or rather the description down below. But let me leave you with one thing. If we want to have a better future, we have to fill our preceding generations' heads with the right ideas. Not ideas that will teach them what to think, but instead ideas that will teach them how to think according to the correct principles. Because that way you will cultivate a culture of critical thinkers that will not be susceptible to the kind of trickery we are seeing occur throughout American schools. But until that point, until we get to a point where we are serious about philosophy, we are serious about critical thinking and learning, we will continue to raise a generation of sheep that will be susceptible to whatever the system tells them. And that is a dangerous prospect for the protection and preservation of liberty and the protection and preservation of a good, free, civil society for future generations. My friends, if you like this video, be sure to comment, like, share, Subscribe to this channel. If you want to help me get my message out there, be sure to donate to me on Patreon, PayPal, Locals, everywhere. It's all in the comment section down below. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted, and most importantly, my friends, please stay pensive. Bye, guys.